Hey folks, this is Melanie from the Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking. Talking with you today because I have seen the movie The Sound of Freedom, and I'm sure most of you folks have at least heard of it. And it's a likable movie. There's nothing wrong with watching it, but there are some things about human trafficking that it gets wrong. And since a lot of people are considering this their education, their introduction to what human trafficking is, we wanted to set the record straight here. So I'm going to talk about my three biggest concerns with the movie. So the first one is that this is not what most human trafficking looks like in the United States. Human trafficking does indeed happen in the United States, and most people who are trafficked in the United States are American citizens, about 80%, according to the Polaris Project, who is the expert in data and statistics about human trafficking. In the United States, most sex trafficking victims are adults. An older statistic you may have heard about the average age of entry into trafficking being 13 has been debunked. So most victims are older, most child victims are older teenagers. When a very young child, a prepubescent child, is being trafficked, it's usually by their family or guardians. Human trafficking, by definition, is when force, fraud, or coercion is used to extract labor or commercial sex from an adult. Commercial meaning money is trading hands, or money or something of value, such as drugs, rent, something like that. Or with a minor, it's when commercial sex act is extracted from the minor. There does not need to be the force, fraud, or coercion part. So kidnapping is almost never the point of entry into trafficking, and trafficking victims do not need to move across international borders or even state borders or even city borders. Movement is not necessary. That's depicted in the movie, doesn't always happen, just want to throw that out there. Second biggest concern about the movie is that this is not at all what most child sexual abuse looks like. So in the movie, we see an organized network of traffickers who provide sexual access to wealthy, organized men. And I'm not going to say that never happens, but it's a very small percent of child sexual abuse. There's an estimated 10 to 21,000 children in the United States who are being trafficked at any moment. I mean, that's a lot. The number should be 0, and this is much, much higher than what it should be. But if you look at the overall number of children being sexually abused in the United States, based on the Adverse Childhood Experiences study from the CDC and census numbers about how many kids we have in the United States, about 811,000 kids are sexually abused for the first time every year. That doesn't even include all sexual abuse, because many kids are abused more than once and many kids are abused by more than one individual. But so we got 811,000 total versus 10 to 21,000 being trafficked. That means most people who sexually abuse children are not paying for it. They are not doing this commercially. So the way they get access to their victims is by building relationship with children, building relationships with parents, earning that trust. And this is why I'm even bringing this point up in this video, is because it's very important for people to understand that. It's easy to protect kids from child sexual abuse if you think that it's only committed by a few very wealthy, influential, organized people. Most of us don't know any of those people, but it's not. And we can't protect kids if we don't understand what we're protecting them from. So I'm bringing that point up here today just so everyone can keep that in the back of their mind. My third issue about the video, third concern, is that this isn't what aftercare for trafficking victims looks like. The movie ends with the little girl coming back home, playing and singing and acting just like she was before she was trafficked. And it's beautiful, and it's heartwarming, and it's great. I like the ending too, it's moving, but it's a problematic way to depict what trafficking is and what victims need afterwards. So in the United States, most child sex trafficking victims have a significant abuse history. Many of them are from foster care, and many of them have run away either from foster care or biological homes. So you take a child who's got all those issues and you reunite them with their family that they came from. All those issues are still there, plus a whole lot of other issues related to the trauma the child experienced while they were being trafficked, plus issues related to the trauma, the stress, the stigma, the negativity that the parents experienced or guardians experienced while this child is being trafficked. That's not good either. So you taking a bad situation, making it worse, and putting an even more vulnerable child into it, that's just not going to work. If I were ever asked what to do in a situation where, like something is depicted in the movie, where the child's point of entry was the parents being tricked, there is no depictions of abuse or anything like that. The parents had not done anything wrong, but the child still was trafficked. If I were asked what decisions would have to go into letting that child go back home, or determining if the family had what they needed to take care of her, I'd be asking questions like, can they access therapy for the child and for the family? Can they talk to her about healthy sexual relationships? Because trafficking victims tend to gravitate towards unhealthy sexual relationships. Can they recognize signs of drug use and respond to that and talk about that intelligently? Can they deal with potentially a whole lot of anger coming from that child? Because it's not uncommon for children who experience significant trauma to blame their parents and to act out, even when, in a logical sense, the parents have done nothing wrong. These are all things that you have to take into account. And if a family can't do all of this, then the child has to live someplace where their caretakers can. Unfortunately, loving a child is not enough to fix trauma that they experience. If it was, the world would be a much, much, much better, healthier, happier place. I'm bringing this up because not just because it's portrayed in the movie, but because it's really important that people understand how complicated the needs of trafficking survivors are, and why they need a lot, and why they need very extensive amounts of help from the rest of society in order to get them back on their feet. And when they don't get that, they usually don't wind up back on their feet. So again, it's a good movie. There's nothing wrong with liking it. But I want to talk about some of the things that it gets wrong, some of the inaccuracies. If anybody finds this interesting and finds the movie interesting and wants to learn even more, RRCAHT is planning a round table about this to kind of unpack this movie, get some experts together, talk about this stuff in a lot more detail. If you're interested, you can email us at RRCAHT, the numeral 1, at gmail.com. That's rcat1@gmail.com. And ask to be put on our mailing list. And when we have the time and the date, we'll let you know. Thanks so much.